In this video, we'll try to understand what exactly is ADO.NET connection pooling, and we'll also iterate through some important points around connection pooling. So when we use ADO.NET in our C# application or VB.NET application, right, what we do is, first thing is we go ahead and we create a connection object, we open it, then we do all the operations like creating the command object, getting data set, data reader, or probably just doing an execute non-query, whatever it is. And after that, we go ahead and we close the connection object. Now this creation of the connection object and opening of the connection object is quite intensive. In other words, when you say open the connection object, it opens up a socket, some kind of handshaking happens, the connection string is parsed if the format is proper or not. The authentication mechanism is executed. So for example, if you say it's a Windows authentication, it will try to go and authenticate from the Windows ADS, and a lot of other series of steps will happen before this connection object gets connected to the SQL Server database or to the RDBMS. And once the connection object is opened, you will do the operation and you will close it. In other words, this creation of the connection object is quite intensive, and you'd like to avoid this whole thing again and again, right? So in other words, you would like to say that, okay, open up the connection object, do all this series of steps, do the operation, close the object. But when I say close, don't take this connection object and go for garbage collection. Don't remove this object from memory, but rather than that, pool it, cache it, so that next time when somebody says connection.open, you would like to take from the pool rather than going and executing all of these intensive steps. So in short, you'd like this to happen. So as soon as you open the connection object, it goes through all those series of steps, opens up the socket, does handshaking, creates a connection object, executes the SQL command, whatever it is. After that, rather than going to the garbage collection, you would like to go and put this object into a connection pool. And that's what exactly connection pooling means. Connection pooling means, once the connection object is opened, after that, rather than going and recreating the object again and again, what ADO.NET does is it actually takes up that connection object and puts it into a thing called as a pooler. In this pooler, the object will be cached, and later if somebody again goes and says connection.open, it will not go through this series of steps, but it will rather take from the pool and start executing your SQL. So let's try to demonstrate connection pooling. So what I'll do is, now definitely if I have to open up a connection, I need to have a connection string, right? So I'll go and create a connection string here. So what I'll do is, you can see at the left hand side, I have a nice database here called as mycusdb. So I'm going to go and take the connection string from this mycusdb here. So let me right click and I'll take up this connection string, okay, and I'll say paste it. Okay, now you can see that let me just press enter and indent it. Okay, and right, now you can see that in the connection string itself, it has specified something called as pooling equal to false. Okay, so what I'll do for now is, I'll just go and delete this. I'll just keep this as my connection string. Okay, and this connection string, I will go and pass it over here. Point number 1 to remember: by default, connection pooling is enabled. You don't have to do anything. Connection pooling is enabled by default in ADO.NET. Okay, so in order to demonstrate that, what I'll do is, I will go and run this code, this opening and connection of a code of the code right inside a big for loop. So what I'll do is, I'll go ahead and I will create a for loop here, and this for loop, let's say it runs 1000 times. Okay, and so what this for loop does, it just opens up a connection. I will not do any operations at this moment, right, and we'll close the connection. Now if I am saying that the connection pooling is enabled by default, what should happen is, this oConnection.open should not create new connection object. It should take the same connection object from the pool, right? So what I'll do here is, once this connection object opens, right, I'll just put a thread.sleep here so that I can see the output, and I will do a simple console.write line here to just see that how many connections opened. Okay, so I'll say here connections opened, and I will put this I value here, right? So as soon as I do a control F5 over here, it will start executing. It will wait for 100 milliseconds over here. Again, open up the new connection. Now what should happen is, even if this for loop is running 1000 times, I should not see too many connection objects getting created. It should use the same connection object from the pool again and again rather than recreating it. Now, in order to see the internal of connection pooling, we need to use performance counters. In case you are new to performance counters, what my suggestion is to go to the best practices video section and see the first video which talks about what is performance counters and how to use perfmon. So in this video, I'll not talk about how to use performance counters, how to use perfmon, but we are going to use performance counters to see that basically what's happening internally, right? So let me go ahead here and let me invoke the perfmon tool. Okay. And let me go ahead here. Let me click on this report here and let me remove all the counters for now. And let me go and start running this application. So I'm going to do a control F5 here, and you can see that he has started opening lots of connections, right? And I will go here and let me add .NET SQL client performance counter. So you can see here I have something called as .NET data provider for SQL server. So this .NET data provider for SQL server, I'm going to go and add the counters of this. Why? Because I'm using the SQL connection object which is related to SQL server, right? And I will go and use this console application 2 which is running. So this is console application 2 here, and I'll go and click on add here and I'll say okay. Now if you see over here very quickly, you can see lots of values here, lots of things over here on the screen, and I'll explain you step by step. But the first thing you will see here is, look at the last two things over here. Okay, so you can see at the side this is running, and here we have a lot of performance counters which is monitoring this application. Okay, let me go and close this because not needed at this moment. Okay, so here we have collected some data. Let's try to understand this data. Okay. First, look at the last two entries over here. Soft connects per second and soft disconnects per seconds. Okay. Let me first explain you what exactly is this soft connects and what exactly is this hard connects. When your application goes and connects to the database, right? When it actually goes and connects to the database, that is called as a hard connect. And when you do a connection.close, and if it actually disconnects from the actual database, it is called as a hard disconnect. But if this connection object is created from the pool, it is called as a soft connect. And if the connection object is returned back to the pool after you do a close, it is called as a soft disconnect. In other words, if you see a lot of soft connects and soft disconnects, that means pooling is happening. If you see a lot of hard connects and hard disconnects, that means pooling is not happening. You are actually hitting the SQL server, right? So if we go back to our data, right, what the perfmon has captured, so you can see over here that it is saying that soft connects per second is 9 and soft disconnects per second is 9. In other words, it is actually taking the object from the pool, right? Second thing is, you can see here it is saying number of active connection is 1. Active connection is 1 means basically as the for loop was running, right, we had only one connection open at a given moment of time, right? So you can see number of active connection is 1 and number of pooled connection is 1. In other words, it was using the object from the pool, and there is no non-pooled connection. In other words, we have no objects which were not used from the pool. Objects were used from the pool, and you can see here it is saying number of active connection pool is 1. So from this data, what is captured by perfmon, I can conclude that I can see number of active connection pool is 1, right? I can see that a lot of soft connects and disconnects are happening. That means connection pooling is enabled. So the first thing to remember is connection pooling is enabled by default in ADO.NET. Now let's go ahead and disable the connection pooling. And if we disable the connection pooling, what should happen? We should see a lot of hard connects and hard disconnects happening, right? So let us go ahead and do that. So in order to go and disable connection pooling, you have to only say pooling is equal to false. So this will go and disable connection pooling. Okay. So I'll again go and run this application, Control F5. So there you can see application is running. Let's again go back to our perfmon tool. Now remember that, the data will not get refreshed here automatically. You have to remove and again add the counters. So I'm going to go and remove all counters, and let me go ahead and add counters. Again, in case you are new to performance counters and perfmon, please go ahead and see the video which we have in our best practices section, which will help you to understand what exactly is performance counter. So let me go here, take this SQL Server, let me take console application, right? I'll add it here and I'll say okay. Now you can see lot of hard connects and hard disconnects are happening. In other words, the ADO.NET.open command is actually connecting to SQL Server, right? Second thing is, you can see there is no active connection pools here. It is 0. You can see a number of active connection pool is equal to 0. Number of non-pooled connection is equal to 1. In other words, things are happening not happening from the pool, but it is non-pooled. It has been created from scratch, right? So the first point to remember is, by default, connection pooling is enabled, and in case you want to go and disable it, you have to say pooling is equal to false. That is the first point to remember. The second point to remember is, and this is a very important point to remember, because the first point is happening by default, right? So you never have to worry about connection pooling, okay? But the second important point to remember is, every unique connection string will have a connection pool. In other words, for example, over here now, let's say I do something like this. Let me go and remove the for loop. Let's say I have this string connection string 1 here, and let me go and create a connection string. I have the first connection string and I have one more connection string here called as connection string 1. Okay, let me go and remove pooling equal to false. I want the pooling to be enabled, right? Now, both of these connection strings are absolutely identical, right? So if I go and say connection string.open this, or if I say connection string.open this, it will take the connection object from the pool. But now what I'll do is, this second connection string, let me make it localhost, right? So you can see here now, I have both of these connection strings are connecting to the same computer. They are connecting to the same database. Only thing is that one has the actual PC name and the other one has localhost, right? So what I'll do here is, I'll say okay, connection.open, right? I will again go and open one more connection here, right? Let's say O connection 1, and for this I will use connection string 1, okay, right? And afterwards I'll go and close it. So O connection 1 dot close, okay. And what I'll do is, I'll do a console dot read line here. So I'll just say here console dot read line. Now what will happen is, it will go, ADO.NET will go and create one pool, okay, for this connection string and one pool for this connection string. So if I do a control F5, okay, and if I go and start my perfmon, and if I start monitoring, I should see that there are two connection pools enabled. So let me do a control F5 here again, right? So there it is. What I've done is, I have opened both of these connection and I've done a console.read line, okay. Now let us go back here, remove all the counters again, as I've told that perfmon does not do auto refresh, right? So we have to go and add the counters again. So I've gone here now, I'll say here .NET for SQL Server, .NET data provider for SQL Server, and I want to measure connection pooling with respect to console application, okay. I'll say add here, I'll say okay. Great, you can see over there now, number of active connection pool is 2. Number of active connections are 2. Why? Because I've said obj connection 1.open and obj connection.open. So you can see there are 2 active connection, there are 2 pool, and there are 2 pooled connections. So the second point to remember is, for every unique connection string, a pool will be created. So if you have the same connection string, then the same pool will be used. So for example, let's say if the same connection string was used here, for example, I'll use connection string here. You can see now O connection as well as O connection 1 is pointing towards the same connection string. Now let me do a control F5 here, okay. So I'll do a control F5 here. Now let me go ahead and again remove all the counters here. Let me add it. So let me add the counters back. So I'm going to say, okay, go to .NET SQL Server here, go to console application, add, and say okay. Now you can see here, very interesting. Number of active connections are 2. That is right. Number of active connections are not connection pool. Number of active connections are 2, but you can see the active connection pool is only 1. So remember, if the connection string changes with the slightest value, even though you are connecting to the same database, even though you are connecting to the same computer, right, it will create a new connection pool. This is what we have to remember as developers, that try to use the same connection string across your project so that connection pooling is used to its maximum. This is the second point to remember. So the first point to remember was connection pooling is enabled by default. The second point to remember is that for every unique connection string, a pool will be created.